Ye come seeking amusing film-related banter and salty old pirates, eh? Sure, you came to the proper place, but keep a weather eye open, mates, and hold on tight as Alan, Calvin, and Saul of Diminishing Returns review and discuss the Pirates of the Caribbean film series and pitch their own ideas for sequels to them movies. Before it be too late to alter your course, mateys, there be plunder and spoilers ahead for the whole Pirates of the Caribbean series, as well as the ride. Enjoy! Yarg, me arties, welcome to Diminishing Returns, arg. This be Calvin here today on the show, and with me are scurvy bilge rat Alan.
Arr!
And first mate Saul. That's not funny, I can't think of anything else funny.
You're right.
So yeah.
Hey, why couldn't the pirate get into the cinema?
Oh, I know this. No, because they were charging too much. Is that it?
No, because the movie was rated R.
Oh. Oh, that's funnier than what I thought. So yes, today
only works if you're American.
Today, in anticipation of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, or in other territories, Pirates of the Caribbean, Salazar's Revenge, we're going to be looking at the first 4 Pirates of the Caribbean films and discussing them and how we feel about them and the ride on which it was based, presumably. So, this is the first time we've looked at a film based on a ride. Have either of you been on Pirates of the Caribbean? I took it upon myself to, in my painstaking research for this podcast, to go to Disneyland last week and go on the ride, but it was being renovated, so I couldn't go on it.
Did you ever experience the ride pre Johnny Depp?
Oh yes, a few times, yeah.
Okay, so take us through it from the beginning, because I've never been on it.
So it's a nice little boat ride. You get in a little boat, and you go along the water, and then there's a pirate man saying, "Arg, me arties," and all this kind of stuff, and then you go down a little drop, you don't get terribly wet, and then you just go through scenes from pirate ransacked villages in the Caribbean. So it's all animatronics. It's basically what Michael Crichton basically wrote Westworld based on the animatronics of Pirates of the Caribbean. Well, it's all just, they're moving around and they're saying things, and someone's chasing a woman around a well, and a mare's being pulled out of the well and spraying water out of his mouth, that sort of thing. That's pretty much the ride in a nutshell.
Is it like a log flume ride, or is it all very slow?
No, it's very slow. It's basically just going around and seeing these different scenes, and there's music, and there are bits in the film that directly reference bits from the ride. Like, there is a bit where there's a load of men locked up in a jail, and they're trying to tempt a dog with some keys near them with a bone.
Well, I mean, the idea of making a movie based on a ride is bizarre to me. Apart from anything else, I thought all the rides at Disney World were based on films. So what is this thing? Where did they get Pirates of the Caribbean from?
No, there's a few. I think it's more. I don't think they make any rides that aren't based on properties anymore, but they certainly used to. Because if you remember Eddie Murphy vehicle, The Haunted Mansion,
yes,
as well, it's another Disney film based on a ride.
Yes, they were basic. Yeah. I mean, they weren't based on anything because they were sort of there from the start of Disneyland. So they were more sort of. I mean, this is when the Hall of Presidents was a major attraction there, and all the sort of film specific rides came afterwards.
When did Disneyland open?
In California, it was in the 50s, and in Florida, I think it was the 70s. I've only ever been on the Florida one. I can't speak for the California one. But yeah, the film is basically harking back to. I can't think of any other modern pirate movies, but they were quite a thing in like the 40s and 50s, weren't they?
It's true though. I mean, the pirates were. It was a dead genre. It was, they'd done. It was Cutthroat Island, which seemed to be the nail in the coffin.
The Gina Davies film.
Yeah, but it had been kind of stumbling for a long time. It was old hat, wasn't it? And I think it's because it's got this very kind of 1940s Errol Flynn kind of feel to it. Swashbuckling, like proper swashbuckling.
What about Muppet Treasure Island? That was one in our lifetime.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it was a little bit out of date, and that idea, and it had been kind of supplanted by the likes of Indiana Jones and that kind of action adventure stuff. And we were getting a bit tired of all that. And then I guess these things always come back eventually, don't they? And
well, yeah, absolutely. The Western will be well, it's sort of happening now anyway, isn't it? The Western is being revived. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I'll say is that it was interesting rewatching some stuff from these films, just how earnestly it plays it. Like, it's not a particularly nod and a wink, tongue-in-cheek pirates movie. It's very much a kind of like, no, pirates are cool, and we're going to just do pirates like as they were and take it seriously enough that
I don't know about that, because I think
it isn't.
They play,
a sense of humour,
play it straight, wrong, yes, but I think like Geoffrey Rush, for example, is playing the classic pirate. He's like the proper
exactly
kind of pirate.
That's what I mean.
But I don't know.
He was
maybe
the guy I was going to point to.
Maybe from my point of view, I watched that with a certain sense of kind of postmodern irony, or at least a tongue-in-cheek, right? But perhaps it's not particularly meant to be like that.
That's the thing. It feels to me like they said to Geoffrey Rush, like he said, "What's his character?" And they just said to him, "Oh, he's like the stereotypical pirate. he's just the guy you think of when you think of a pirate." And he was like, "Okay, and what makes him tick?" And they're like, "Oh, well, he's just a pirate, but like actually think about that for a second and think what that guy would actually be." And he sort of went, "Oh yeah, that would actually be quite interesting, I guess, if you took it seriously and played it straight to an extent." And that sort of seems to be how the films are pitched in general, if you ask me. And obviously, like I say, it's with a light-hearted.
Well, I think perhaps the sense of the nudge and wink sense of it comes through Jack Sparrow, which is something we're going to have to deal with as a sort of a separate topic. I think the character of Jack Sparrow, because that character and Johnny Depp's performance is basically why this film was a success. It's why there's been four others of them as well. Do you agree with that? Not to say that it's not a well put together action film and all that, but I think that is why it rose up.
I think if you took Jack Sparrow out of the first film and released this, I don't know. I think it probably would have gone down relatively well.
Yeah, I think it would have been all right.
It wouldn't have been.
But
it wouldn't have been the cultural like powerhouse that it was. It wouldn't have. There wouldn't be a fifth film coming out soon, put it that way.
So, I mean,
I think it would have gone down.
So, just to talk about Jack Sparrow for a bit, I think that character, it became an instant icon, didn't it? In like the way that you've got an Indiana Jones or that kind of kind of thing. And I think you can always tell when something has become an instant icon because everybody dresses up as them for fancy dress. That's how you know. It's like Heath Ledger's Joker. You know you're on a winner.
Totally.
And I think, but it is also one of those characters that anyone can kind of do an impression of, or at least a kind of passing caricature of. Yeah. So that you know they're doing.
Well, yeah.
So
Calvin, do an impression of Jack Sparrow.
Oh, hello, me lovely ladies.
Jack Sparrow and Johnny Depp are pretty similar, aren't they?
Well, the character's based on Keith Richards, isn't it? We all know that.
Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but doesn't that just feel a bit like... You know what it reminded me of when Keith Richards showed up in the third one? it felt like when Tony Blair turned up on the Catherine Tate show or Comic Relief or whatever it was. Just that kind of laboured, this old man's been told that this will be good for his appearance and he doesn't really understand what he's doing. Anyway,
okay, so
we'll get to that in a minute.
For a start, this character, it feels like something that would not be written like that, and that no studio would like. No studio would take a risk on a character like that because it could just be such nonsense. And I think Johnny Depp was getting away with it just because he's Johnny Depp, and so they're like, "Oh fuck, we're stuck with this." And he's like, "Well, I'm doing it my way. I'll piss off." So they've had to go all in. And it's paid off for them, big style. But just seeing that character as it is, you know that the studio must have hated it, like when they were seeing that. Especially, imagine like seeing the rushes and it's like out of context of the whole thing, and you're seeing him fannying about and like waving his arms around, and you're like, they must have just thought, like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He's like deliberately tanking our film.
There was a complaint, I can't remember who this was from exactly, but there was a complaint from someone involved in the film that, like, why is he playing at, like, a gay drunk hairdresser? And that was the feeling.
Like, how big was Johnny Depp's, like, credibility and star power in 2003, was it, the first one? 2002?
Yeah, 2003.
Because Jack Sparrow is what? That's probably the definitive Johnny Depp role.
It is now, yeah.
So his career definitely went up after.
No, I don't know about that. It's just that time goes by.
But he was a big name.
Yeah, he was a well-established name.
Yeah, Edward Scissorhands, Sleepy Hollow, Crybaby. He was in a lot.
I mean, yeah, this is the kind of first major kind of big Hollywood franchise sort of thing. Like, he was always more your kooky cult Tim Burton kind of thing, but still very much the Tim Burton end of cult, not like proper cult. So yeah, he was a big name. Everybody knew Johnny Depp was.
Well, similarly, this was also kind of Gore Verbinski's the thing that put him out there as a huge blockbuster director. He'd come off the Ring, the American remake of The Ring that we covered in a previous episode.
Yeah, which we all really liked.
But that was about as big a film as he'd made at that point, The Ring. So to say he went from that to this is quite a big step up. So I can see how, again, like I can completely believe that the producers were kind of shitting themselves and not quite sure what to make of it.
And as we said, I would say that Gore Verbinski is responsible for the fact that this film is very well made. I think Gore Verbinski is a great director, and this is a really well put together piece. Like the way it's structured, the way it's paced, and all that. Like, yeah, Johnny Depp is the heart of it, I think, but yeah, the whole body is there, and that's down to Gore Verbinski, I think.
I agree. I think he took a project that on paper shouldn't have worked at all, and kind of made it, hammered it into shape.
The other thing I'll say is that the character of Captain Jack Sparrow is not the lead. He's not the main focus, really. He's the side character. He's the side hero. He's like Han Solo, isn't he? And he's not the focus, or in the fourth film he is, but in those original films he's not the focus, and I think that really works because it allows him to be a bit more of a kooky character. We don't have to, and it's kind of like Bender in Futurama, where he's the bad guy and he does really terrible things sometimes, but we still love him. But he couldn't be the hero and do that. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean completely, Alan. I feel like, had it been anyone else in that role, apart from Johnny Depp, this is something that you would rewrite the script and make Orlando Bloom's Will Turner the main hero of the film, and Johnny Depp would be a bumbling side character for comedy relief. And for Johnny Depp to be... He might not be the focus emotionally of the story, but he is very much the star of the film.
But like, who else... Could you, like, if that was going to be played straight, or like however the studio imagined it, who else would you get to play it? Like, what... You know, like, who can you imagine anyone else playing that character, and how would they have done it?
No, and I mean that's a credit to Depp, because it's like he's completely just that character. You can't really picture anyone else in that role.
I mean, you have to go for someone like I would go for someone older, so he becomes a kind of mentor figure almost, and sort of like this guy at the end of his life, still clinging on to his former glories. That sort of idea. Yeah, like
I mean, he's a
Alec
bit older
Baldwin.
than. Oh God! I mean, he is a bit older than
Alec Baldwin as the pirate.
He is a bit older than Orlando Bloom and
yeah.
Keira Knightley anyway, by about 15 years or something. And but it's safe to say then that we're all fans of Jack Sparrow and Johnny Depp's performance.
Well, this is what I wanted to get into quickly. Like how do we feel about the film as a whole? Like, are we fans of the first one? Or?
Oh yes, huge. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I mean, if we're talking just about the first one, I didn't have particularly high expectations, to be honest. I've seen it before, and I watched it again. I haven't seen it for a long time, and I was really impressed by it. Actually, like I said, it just worked as an action adventure. It felt like watching a Bond film on a bank holiday. You know, it was that kind of feel.
Yeah.
And it worked perfectly for that. It's got enough kooky characters to make it entertaining, and it does the job. Like, it's never going to be like a masterpiece, but and it was really, and the visuals look really great. The whole production design is fantastic, and it gets that world, you know, it makes it all very exciting. The music, it's really good.
Yeah, I have a weird relationship with the film, the first one, because I just objectively I can see that it's very well made, and like I totally get why Jack Sparrow's popular, and you know I think Gore Verbinski did a pretty great job, and like I get it, but there's just something about the first film that completely leaves me cold, and I don't know what it is. Like I sort of sit there and think, yeah, this is all very well done, good on it, but it just doesn't do anything for me, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what disconnect there is there, but essentially, yeah, I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. I get quite bored by it. Overall, I feel like it's fairly mediocre. But like when I take a step back and really look at it objectively, I can see that it's, you know, a very well made action blockbuster, and I probably should like it more than I do.
Well, it does have a couple of big drag factors in the names of Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, Orlando Bloom is one of the worst actors of his generation, isn't he?
Oh,
he's really terrible. And Keira Knightley.
So is Keira Knightley.
Well, Keira Knightley. Do you know what?
Oh no, I will get on a soapbox to defend. Keira
I was feeling the same way, right? I was thinking Keira Knightley shit. But I've definitely seen her do decent work. She's good in Pride and Prejudice and a couple other things. But I think she's really miscast in this. I think this is not a good part for her because she doesn't really do the damsel in distress thing kind of very well. But then she can't do the strong, independent female thing very well either. I don't know what she can do, but I've definitely seen her do things where she can act. I just think she's not being asked to because she's getting away with it.
You know, I feel like I have to defend Keira Knightley a lot more than what I, you know, proportionally would do. I think she's a perfectly fine for what she does. I think she's great, to be honest. I love her in this film.
But what have you seen her in? Like I feel like she's kind of, she just about gets away with it in this film, just about.
Yeah.
But I've never really seen her in something and thought, yeah, that was a good performance. And I've like
Atonement,
I say,
she was great in that.
That, I mean,
Bend
that's
It Like
a shit
Beckham
film to begin with. I don't really remember in that one. She's quite a small part.
Pride and Prejudice, as Alan said. I think she's perfectly fine. I don't really get all the hate.
She's a bit shit
her.
in Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, if you've seen that. She doesn't really...
and you know,
Imitation Game, she was good in that.
There is another thing as well, which I admit is a bit more superficial, and so it seems a bit harsh, but I can't stand her voice.
King Arthur, one of the worst films I've ever seen. Sorry,
I can't stand her voice, and the way her mouth moves, it's so aggravating, and I'm not even sure why. But, I mean, am I hitting any notes here? Do you know what I'm talking about, or have you not?
I know what you mean, but I like it. I like that her mouth is that way. Naturally pouty. She can't help but not pout.
I don't know. It's not just that. Do you know what? It's like, because Keira Knightley, like if we're talking superficially, all the ingredients there is someone I should find attractive, but there's just something about her that just makes me feel a little bit kind of creepy, or creeped out rather than creepy, I suppose. And she was just this kind of like Princess Diana head tilt thing, like, oh, I'm so modest and bashful, and
I mean, every film in this series does crowbar in a romantic subplot between the two young stars. I don't mind it in this film. I think it feels fine.
But
here.
The thing is that because in this film, essentially, it is the plot. It's like it's not a crowbarred in love story. It is the love story, and then there's a plot to keep them moving, to put obstacles.
At least in this one, you've got Norrington bouncing off them, which sort of makes up for it.
Don't you think Jack Davenport's a load of shite as well, though?
Oh no, I love Norrington.
No, I've never seen Jack Davenport add anything to a character that another actor couldn't have done. Do you know what I mean? Like he's the most generic, standard man, and
I don't know.
It's just boring.
I don't mind him. I think he's fine. Well, the part is boring. Like, he's supposed to be a boring, unexciting guy.
Yeah, I know, but he plays that in everything.
Yeah, and he's fine doing that. Well, I couldn't buy him as, like, a lead. Like, I'm sure he couldn't play Jack Sparrow, but in what he is here, he's fine. And I think the rest of the supporting cast are very nice and colourful and characterful. Kevin McNally is really good.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there is, apart from
Mackenzie
these kind
Crook.
of main guys, there's lots of...
That monkey.
Yeah, there's lots of little side characters who are really just quirky
Jonathan
enough
Pryce.
to be comic relief, aren't they? Yeah. But yeah, so they're all... The plot is that there's some sort of curse thing going on, and that's kind of a reveal later on where they turn out to be a skeleton army kind of thing. I
remember that in the trailer.
It takes the...
You better believe in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
Yeah.
that.
Great line.
So it's a bit of a twist, I suppose, but it's handled really well. It takes the film into full-on kind of supernatural territory, but it works. And I think the skeleton army are really well rendered. Like, they look really cool, and especially for 2003 effects, they're done really well.
Well, they cast well as well. Like, Mackenzie Crook looks like a pirate ghost to begin with. So
perfect.
But I mean, I don't think the film would have worked without going full-blown supernatural. I think that's a big part of why it works and why it's a franchise with legs beyond the first film. I think if it was just swashbuckling pirates, then it would have appealed to some people, but a lot of people would have been like, yeah, just boring pirates, just bunch of thieves out on the sea being unpleasant. You have to add in the magic MacGuffin stuff to get a load of people to pay attention.
Yeah, and there's the other element that I think works really well, especially in terms of the action adventure bit, are the set pieces, like where, for example, Jack Sparrow and Will Turner are having the fight in the blacksmith thing. And it just really incorporates the physicality and the set, and it's slightly comedic, but, it got all the sort of action you want it to have as well. They do that really well in all the films, and that's a big part of it, I think. I keep coming back to Indiana Jones. It seems to be a great touchstone of action adventure, and doing
with
it well.
a bit of a supernatural twist.
And it just does it really well. Again, I'll put that on the director, I think, because rather than writers, because the writer is very much they have a fight, and then someone has to bring that to life. So your director and choreographers, I guess, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but I will say that, and it needs it because sword fights are one of the most boring things in film. Generally speaking, that's why you never see that's why you only ever see sword fights when someone's cutting a rope and then a chandelier propels them up into the sky and they come down the curtain and stuff because it's just boring otherwise. Because even a well choreographed sword fight that's got loads of edits in is still just two men tapping pieces of metal at each other, because you can't actually stab near each other and make it look realistic because you get stabbed. What else about Pirates of the Caribbean then?
The music?
Oh yeah, music.
Ah, yes. The music by Klaus Badelt. I love the main theme. I know, Saul, you're gonna get on your. Oh, it's Gladiator.
It is.
Yeah, I know, but
I mean, no, it's an amazing score. Like, I do really love the music, but it is just like recycling Hans Zimmer themes, and I don't know quite what his involvement was in the first one. I know he was involved in some capacity.
yeah. Well, he just did the sequels by himself, didn't he?
Yeah. But I don't know if he like produced the score or something for the first
Yeah,
one.
no,
but it's
he's
got his
credited
fingerprints
as
all
music
over it.
producer.
Yeah. I mean, as I've said in previous episodes, there's melodies in this lifted directly from Gladiator, lifted directly from Lion King 2.
Can you do them for me? I'll judge. Hum them for me. I'll
all
tell
the
you
different melodies.
Yeah, go on.
All right, so in Pirates of the Caribbean, it goes dun 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 dun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, and then in Gladiator, it goes dun 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 dun.
That does sound similar, yeah.
Yeah.
No, apparently there were a lot of composers on the film. I maybe they were rushing it. I don't really know, but yeah. Apparently there were a lot that went uncredited.
But I mean, it has to be said, the music, like, derivative as it is very good and
Gets the
adds
blood
a
flowing
lot to the film. It's a big part of what sells the whole thing and makes it, feel like this big epic and it's one of the last iconic film scores, really, I'd say. We spoke about this in the Harry Potter episode we did. I'd say Pirates of the Caribbean is up there with the more iconic film scores of
That's very
of
true.
all time, really.
Yeah. No, you play that theme and people know what the film is.
If I remember one night walking home past a club night at Leeds Student Union years ago, and you could just hear like some sort of dance remix of the theme from Pirates of the Caribbean blaring out, which always really amused me. It was sort of like dun 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 with like drums and everything. It was brilliant.
No, that's a remix of the
wow.
Gladiator theme.
Oh, yeah.
Ridley Scott DJing.
So, I mean, the one other thing that I would complain about the first film, and it gets even more true for the later films, it's a good 20 minutes too long, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
I mean, the later ones just take the piss completely. But this first one, yeah, it would have been quite easy. Just take a few little bits out, get it down to a more manageable length. And I don't know why they didn't do that. Like, because it's not a very commercial thing to do, to release something 2 hours and 10 minutes long.
Yeah, no, we will get into this more with the sequels, but I am surprised that, like, films like this should be no more than 2 hours, ideally. If it's just a fun adventure film, that's all it needs to be.
And 2 hours would be pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, this one's 142 minutes, and that is far too long.
About 17 minutes of that is credits, though. Yeah.
So, it's safe to say that we're all fans of the first film, then, apart from Sol, who just hates it for no good reason.
I mean, literally.
I'm indifferent. It leaves me cold.
Do you think it's an aesthetic thing with you? Because you don't really like... you don't like Lord of the Rings and that kind of fantasy stuff.
No, because...
neither do I.
If we're moving on to the second one now, the weird thing is the second one does kind of do it for me, even though it's clearly not as good a film.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
On that, like, I'm not saying I like the second one, because as I think we've discussed in a previous episode, I cannot stand films that just call it quits because they've run out of time. And this film's like 3 hours long to begin with, isn't it? It's like absurdly long to say it doesn't do anything. Yeah. Like the second film is just a series of set pieces with no
awful
running plot or through line, really. But those individual set pieces do really work for me. I do find them funny and exciting, and the action works, and I like the production design. And
I know why you don't like the first one. It's because the cursed crew of the Black Pearl, they're kind of like zombies, but not proper zombies, and that always aggravates you, doesn't it?
That is a problem I have with the fourth one. We'll get to that in a minute. The second one's got Bill Nye in it as Davy Jones.
Absolutely the highlight for me of the second film. Bill Nye. Fantastic.
And I do think that's a big part of what makes them work for me more, the second and the third one, to be honest. This is the weird thing. Like I would rather watch the second or the third film, even though they're not like as good. It's a weird thing. But they encompass everything that I like from Gore Verbinski, and I can see that that's present in the first film. It's just there's something about the first film that, like I say, leaves me cold, and I don't know what it is.
Well, presumably, I think Gore Verbinski had more freedom in the later one, so if it is him you like, maybe he's just coming through it more.
But you know how like loads of people like the second and third one?
No.
But they're like, well, it's not as good as the first one, but I love Pirates of the Caribbean. I feel like I'm meeting them at the same level with the second and third one, but I just didn't like the first one very much. It's this weird... I don't know what it is about it. But yeah, I mean, the second and third, for anyone who doesn't know, were shot back to back.
Yes.
They're essentially parts 1 and 2 of the same film.
And we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it on Harry Potter. But when they do that, when they do the two films back to back and basically make one long film that they chop up, cardinal sin as far as I'm concerned. It shouldn't happen.
Well, this was a pretty early example of that. It was before it had become as much of a trend in Hollywood as it now is.
But it's because of Lord of the Rings. They got away with it on Lord of the Rings, and then
but it doesn't have the justification for it here. That's the thing. Lord of the Rings. Well, they were, they were doing different books, even though the books were one big book that got chopped up. But there was still a justification for it, and Harry Potter and Twilight down the line were. Well, this book's so big, we don't want to leave.
That's it, exactly. If you're doing an adaptation of a novel's a big fucking thing, and you have to really cut it down to make a film. And if then that novel is then so revered by the fans that you have to totally do it properly, and you can justify it from a commercial point of view, which they can with Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. But this is just some original bullshit they're making up. They can do whatever they want with it. So make a single film. And then make another single film.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
It doesn't make.
I can understand them wanting to film them back to back as well, but just write two different films
and sprinkle a couple of things in that set up ideas for the next one. You don't.
Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3 are a good example of how to do it because they were shot back to back, and there's a lot of symmetry between the films, and like you say, things sprinkled in, and there's an overarching kind of character based. Bit of evolution that kind of plays more heavily through the second and third film, but is a little bit present in the first one. But they're largely self-contained films. They tell their own stories. They're not reliant on you having seen the other films, really. But here, it's just unnecessary. It's just, and like I say, because the film is like. It is like absurdly long to begin with. The second film, it's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and there's bits in it that don't add anything to that film, and I don't think they even set up that much for the second film either. I don't know why. Like the best example I can think of.
They set up about 20 minutes at the start where they have to bring Jack back from the dead, and that's it. Yeah.
And the bit in the second film where they go to wherever they go and meet the Caribbean woman who's like turns out to be a god or whatever.
Naomi
Harris plays her, yeah. That's just that scene where they meet her the first time and Johnny Depp's like, oh, all right, love, I haven't seen you for a while. And then, and all the other characters are there. It's so long and slow and I don't know why. And it doesn't really add anything. It doesn't set up anything that pays off later. Like you could do that scene in 4 minutes. Like, boom, here's another character. She knows this. They need this information from. Like, move on.
Yeah.
But it's just weirdly slow, and maybe that's just I don't know. Maybe that's the studio just thinking, oh well, we questioned it last time and it paid off. So let's just keep an mouth shut and let them do what they want.
It's Jerry Bruckheimer, isn't it?
The producer, yeah.
Yeah, and he does love his big, bloated, long movies. It is very much within his style.
But there are so many tangents and weird stuff that happens. Like, you mentioned the scene with Naomi Harris, but in the third one, when she becomes a giant, and then it's
turns into crabs.
completely unnecessary. And then, like, even the fact that they have to go they go to, like, the underworld, or they go to the other side or something to bring back Jack after he dies. It's just...
It is unnecessary.
So many tangents.
And she ties into... That character ties into Davy Jones, which... That never really pays off either, because they don't... You know, you could just have Davy Jones as the bad guy. You don't need that extra motivation or whatever. It's just bloating this stuff up that doesn't need to be. Like, you could literally take that character out, that Naomi Harris character out, do a little bit of rewriting, and it wouldn't affect the film, like, really at all. Maybe have her as a one-scene character they go to bring someone back from the dead or whatever. Like, she helps for that and then goes off again.
That should have been the entire third film. It should, like, the entire third film should have been, we're going to bring Jack back from the afterlife.
It's Star Trek 3, isn't it? Search for
but that's
Sparrow.
something. No, but you know, the idea of the pirates go to hell or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Ghostbusters on tangents, and it's weird because there's some ideas in there that would have sustained an entire film, and would have been better if they kind of explored it properly. And the running time, like I said, I've just seen the running time for the third film. I forgot it was this long, but, like, fucking hell, it's 2 hours 49 minutes long. The third film. That's
totally
absurd.
Well, I must admit that the third film, it took me about 3 days to watch it, because I had to do it like in half-hour chunks, because I just couldn't, like...
Yeah.
I just watched the first two, like, as well in the same week, and I just couldn't take it all in one go. It was too much for me. So I had to sort of take breaks.
There's so many confusing... I think a problem with the writing for these two is that characters do things because the plot needs them to do it, rather than it being natural for the character, because there are so many double crosses, and there's that scene, and I think it's the third one.
Yeah, I stopped... I didn't...
You know, when they're on that little beach...
Yeah.
They're on that little beach, and then they're sort of like, someone's double-crossing someone else, and someone's double-crossing, and Jack and Will and Elizabeth aren't on the same page anymore for some reason, and they're all just... It's so confusing, and I don't know who's on whose side or why. Like, they make this huge effort to go and bring Jack back from the underworld or whatever, and then when they eventually do meet up with him, they're kind of like, oh, you're a dick, aren't you? We only, you know, we don't even like you, and it's... Well, why did you go to the effort of saving him, then?
Yeah, and in a really profound way as well. Like, they all sort of stood up and said, "Yes, I'll save my captain." And then, like, they had to go. So it wasn't even just like a practical thing, like, "Oh, he has the thing we need to get to save the world" or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it was a real loyalty thing.
It's weird. Like, objectively, I do think the second and third films are really, like, a bit shit and very, like, poorly made, very poorly written. Certainly. But the individual action sequences and stuff kind of work for me, and just like if Jack Sparrow was gonna drop me off on a desert island somewhere and he was gonna say to me, right, Sol, you can have one of my movies to keep you company whilst you're sat on this island for the rest of however many months it's gonna be before you can get a load of turtles together and surf them back to civilization. Like, I'd probably pick the second film. Like, that for my own, like, entertainment, I'd probably rather watch that over and over again than the first one. But yeah.
That's interesting. Oh, no, I mean, there are brilliant action sequences, like the bit where they're in that wheel in the second one.
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
And there's the sword fight going on top, and Johnny Depp's in the middle running along.
Yeah,
like, it's
that's what, like I said
sequence,
in the first one. Yeah, it's these great little set pieces that work really nicely. Bit too long, but you know, basically work. And it's imaginative. It's a kind of a new idea I haven't seen before. You know, it really feels like a kind of proper 1940s swashbuckling thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And like the final battle sequence in the third film, where it's the ships are in this massive whirlpool, and I can't fault the action at all. It's wonderful, and I do like, in terms of new characters that are introduced, I do really like Tom Hollander as the East India Trading Company man. I think he's a good villain.
He does all right. I don't think he did anything particularly amazing. It's a stock kind of villain, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah. No
Bill Nighy, but yeah, it does fine. But that was the interesting about that I thought Because the obvious thing with after the first film would go, okay, everyone loves Jack Sparrow. Let's do the next adventures of Jack Sparrow and bring in a new cast to surround him. Which they do to a part because they bring in these 2 new villains. But then they keep fucking Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom. And it's
they are like they're kind of the backbone of the trilogy, as it were. They're the overarching story that we're meant to care about.
But my point is, don't make a trilogy, make a series of films, and the Jack Sparrow and the Dead Man's Chest, Jack Sparrow and the whatever.
One thing I do want to touch on though is that the monkey is like back and like undead and everything in the second film. Did that bother you when you watched it? Because
you didn't.
No, I know about
didn't...
this. There's a little end credit. Like Marvel style little joke where the monkey steals a coin, isn't there? So
at the end of the first film,
but it's after the end credits, and I remember going to see it in the cinema, the second one, and everyone just being like, "Why is that fucking monkey still a skeleton?" And like
I thought that
it was
as
something
well.
everyone had to look up online afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I felt it was really
these films do your post credit sequences, and I didn't know that, and I don't watch credits at the cinema, and I'm certainly not going to watch them on DVD. I'm not going to sit through 7-8 minutes of fucking payroll clerk credits to see a shitty scene at the end. It's I don't know why they do it. And if you're going to do it, it just has to be a throwaway gag.
Well, at the end of the third one,
it's like it's like a real.
It's an important part
resolution of the thing.
Yeah. But I mean, at least with the third one, they'd established now that they have a little scene after the end credits, and word had got round by that point that you had to watch these bits after the credits. But I just found it very odd that they did something that sort of obviously jarring for a casual audience in the second film. I mean, it's not a big deal, and anyone who's bothered by it enough can just go and look it up online and stuff, but I don't know, it struck me like an odd decision when I watched it. Particularly in a pre-Marvel world. Like, you could probably get away with that sort of thing more nowadays, but even then, I don't think Marvel ever rely on you having seen those end credit scenes.
No, it's just a little. They're just tasters, aren't they? Just to tickle your fancy for the next film.
Well, I'm going to be very interested to see how, considering that both Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley are back for the latest film.
Are they?
I'll be very...
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yes. I'll be very surprised to... I'll be very interested to see how they sort of address the end credits scene of the third one.
I've got more things I want to complain about.
Oh, okay. All right.
I didn't particularly like the crew of the Flying Dutchman, the way that they were portrayed. And
what are you talking about? There's like the shark guy.
Are they the ones who are made out of limpets and walk out
it's
of
kind of
walls
interesting
and
ideas, but then they're not.
that.
It's not well executed, and especially after the skeleton crew of the last one, the CGI just isn't quite good enough, or it's because you see them all in the sunlight or something, so it maybe makes it more obvious. But I don't think they weren't like motion capture, were they? It feels like they're just animated rather than kind of properly acted.
Pass. I don't know.
It doesn't feel like they are like. Well, Bill Nye does, but the rest of them don't feel like characters. They feel like cartoons.
I'd be surprised if they weren't motion capture, but I guess like Bill Nye, I mean, it's basically still a face that he's motion capturing, whereas the other ones, it wouldn't surprise me if it was just the body movements that were being motion captured and like the face and all that animation was probably.
And you never get any real character from any of them either, which you did with the first film. You kind of got a little bit of like, oh yeah, you can identify who's who, and yeah, that guy's always angry, and that's that sort of thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, but we're not supposed to like. Yeah, it's harder to like Shark Man Beyond. Ooh, that's cool. Whereas, Mackenzie Crook is charming.
Hey, didn't you ever watch Street Sharks when you were younger, Cam?
No, I didn't, but I'm aware of it. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I didn't take to them like I had the previous film. What else? It's too long. Oh yeah, that was the other big thing that I was surprised about. The other big thing I was surprised about is just how much death is in the film.
Yeah,
and particularly like death of essentially innocent bystanders. Like,
Yeah.
like particularly one point, Will Turner is like under the curse of whatever, and the Kraken's coming to get him. He takes refuge on this merchant vessel, and knowing full well that the Kraken's going to take the ship down because it's already happened once. But he doesn't like do anything. The Kraken like kills everybody on board, or those that don't drown are slaughtered by Davy Jones. Like, he cuts their throats. And
There's
it's
a lot of
like
that
these
in
are
the
just
films.
guys who are earning a living, and then Will Turner comes on their ship and dooms them. And it just
Yeah,
and
I
there's
don't know
a,
how I feel about it. I don't know. On one hand, I kind of like that, you're making a pirate movie. It'd be kind of absurd if people didn't die. But on the other hand,
No,
it is just very
I agree.
brushed
that
aside, isn't
I
it?
think,
I know what you mean.
And I think potentially my problem is it's not really the bad guys who are killing them. Although, yeah, it is directly, but
Yeah.
it's the fact that Will Turner, who's the hero, he knows that he's going to be attacked and that everyone
Yeah.
around him is going to be hurt. And it seems like all this is to kind of save one person, or to save Elizabeth, or to save Will, or whatever. And it's just like, how many other people have to die so that you have to live? And like, people who aren't the bad guys, who aren't involved.
Yeah.
They just happen to be too near you when someone's
Well,
trying to kill you.
Yeah.
I rewatched the
that kind of thing always leaves a bit of an icky taste in my mouth as well, because it is so flippant and it's like in Bond films they talk about like how in GoldenEye during the tank chase the tank that James Bond is driving is like running over police cars and stuff, and in reality they would be very much dead, but they always have a shot of where they're just innocent people doing their job, they get out of the car and they're fine.
I mean,
and it's just how callous it is here. It just feels nasty.
I was really struck by it because I rewatched the fourth one last night, and there's a bit early on when Jack Sparrow's cornered by a soldier or someone who's in pursuit of him. He's just an innocent guy, like trying to uphold the law. This is a dangerous fugitive that he's chasing, and then he gets like shot in the back and dies, and Jack Sparrow's dad, Keith Richards, pops out and he's like, "Hello, son," and it's like. It's meant to be this like hooray moment. I was like, for all intents and purposes, innocent man just being shot to death, so that this like violent, dangerous criminal can go off on a treasure hunt. It's like it's very odd how it's handled, and I like I say, I don't really know how I feel about it. On one hand, I kind of like that the films don't, like ignore that people would be dying, but at the same time it's like you say, it's handled in a very glib fashion. It's just not very, it doesn't really.
And the thing is, you've
acknowledge
got
the
enough
weight
bad
that-
guys in the film to have them kill people and still kind of have the brutality of the world, but then have someone to blame for it, or have the they're the bad guys, they're the good guys kind of thing. The only other thing that I was thinking in the second film that didn't make any sense was when you get this whole bit where Keira Knightley's character might fancy Jack Sparrow, and it kind of pays off at the end because she uses that to kind of double cross him. But then in the earlier film, it is very much she's thinking, "Oh God, I might fancy him. Oh no, what if I actually fancy him and I'm supposed to be in love with the other guy?" And it never quite worked. It never sat right, and it didn't make sense. What did you think of that?
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Because I think we are supposed to think, certainly in the second and third films, that there is some kind of love triangle going on between the three of them, and it never quite works. Cause I don't ever question that her and Jack Sparrow would ever really get together. Like, I think he would have a bit of her if he if he could, but he wouldn't want a relationship. And it felt like a forced love triangle.
But again, that seems like something that you would write in that kind of film, with like as a blank script, rather again, Star Wars, they do it as a kind of you're just like, okay, let's put these characters in a love triangle kind of thing, that'll work, But then in this film, surely the second film, you're writing for these characters established. You're writing for that Johnny Depp performance of Jack Sparrow, and it doesn't work for that because that character is not working that way, and. So why have they written it like that? Was this maybe this is like a retooled script from something else or something like that, and they just
possibly. I mean, they'll have been drawing on a lot of different pirate lore and that sort of thing. So I think we can move on to the third. Yeah, they're pretty they blur into one in my mind.
Same.
Like I can't really.
Well, they are very much just parts 1 and 2 of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, well, we said, I said that Jack Sparrow is the thing that makes this really watchable. So taking him out for the first half hour, perhaps not the best idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, just come on, we need to bring him back to life. Come on, boom, done. Get on with it.
Like I say, it should have been the plot of the third film. That should have been the whole film.
I don't
was
even...
the quest to bring Jack back from the dead, and they go to like the afterlife, and there's a.
I'm very. I don't like that kind of thing. It irritates me when a character can die, but they're not really dead, and I think it just removes any kind of stakes for me in a story when it's as easy as just go to the afterlife, bring him back.
I completely agree, but obviously like that was set up in the second film, so they had to, it's kind of the fault of that.
Yeah,
one, really.
I get it. I just hate it.
I agree. I agree.
Didn't die at the end of the last one, and
they shouldn't have done it. Because it's certainly so early into the franchise as well. It's such an unnecessary... if this was like the 7th film and they didn't know if they'd be able to get Johnny Depp to agree to come back for an 8th one, so they killed him off, I'd sort of think fair enough, but...
and they filmed these back to back, so that means they set up his death scene in a way that they could then bring him back. It wasn't kind of, okay, we killed him off in a great sort of sacrifice move, and then... next film comes, we got funding for the next film. Oh shit, we have to bring him back. It's all planned.
Yes.
I will say this though, the bit where Jack Sparrow does turn up and he's in this kind of purgatory, was absolutely my favourite scene in the whole thing, and I thought it was really good.
Very, very Gore Verbinski, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
but it felt like a very cool artistic director being able to do something interesting. But it worked really well. It had that kind of endless time, endless distance limbo feel about it. And he was kind of chasing after himself and nothing was changing. And then these stones come to life and become crabs and it's like totally mental. But it worked really nicely. And I thought it was really brave, frankly, to have it so long, because it's about 7 minutes, this sequence of just him wandering around in this white background with this black ship. And yeah, it felt like a really cool little short film. And obviously he made it as long as he wants because he's making these films as long as he wants. But I appreciated that bit, that it was actually longer. But I thought, in the interest of making the film a more realistic length and taking stuff out, you take that chunk, you cut it down to a couple of minutes and establish the same stuff. And then you can use that bigger sequence and like release it before the film as like a kind of viral video thing, or like an extended trailer of, look, hey, Jack Sparrow is in the afterlife and they're going to have to go and save him. Like, that would have been a really cool like teaser
they
thing,
almost certainly would have done if it had been released a few years on. I mean,
okay, well, anyway, basically, that kind of dreamy limbo sequence was my favorite thing in the and again, yeah, I think speaks to a great director. And a good actor, like performing a solitary thing is good. Yeah, I could watch a whole film like that probably, but no one else would. So, yeah, go on next.
I don't think I've seen the trailer for the new film. I've just seen this weird extended sequence.
I don't know. It might be what I saw. No, my thing I saw was a trailer, I think. It had what's his face in as the new bad guy,
Javier Bardem.
Yeah. It was him who encouraged me to go and watch it personally.
Really?
Yeah. It's really weird. He's so he's just like, hello, it's me, Javier Bardem. I'm here to welcome you to Pirates of the Caribbean. It's such an odd, like, of all the people they could have. Well, you know why? It's because Johnny Depp's become problematic, like, so they don't want to have him front and center anymore. Because if he was there, like, it might put people off a bit. And they're obviously saving Keira Knightley as some sort of surprise. So,
what sort of surprise?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I ruined that for anyone.
Well, no, I mean,
not really.
She's like second build from what I can gather, so I think she is in it.
Is she?
She's second up on IMDb, but that might just not be accurate.
Oh, that's... Yeah, I wouldn't trust that. On the poster anyway, it's Johnny Depp, Javier Bardem, and Jeffrey Rush.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey Rush, I guess, but the average person might be like, who the hell's Jeffrey Rush?
Oh, that's something else about the third one, actually, because obviously he gets brought back. He's the surprise at the end of the second one, though.
Oh yeah,
Captain Barbosa, Jeffrey Rush
God,
comes
I hate
back.
that as well. It's so like
it's odd, isn't it?
Well,
but I
I
love
remember
that
when
character, and I love how he plays it.
I remember when I watched the second film, like it had been 4 years or something since I'd seen the first film, and I wasn't that into it then. I just thought, who the fuck's that? I completely forgot that it was this pirate guy from the first film. I just but they make such a big thing out of, it's that guy, remember? You remember this guy you all loved? The other thing was I don't remember everyone loving him in the first film. I remember everyone loving
that's just it.
Johnny Depp. He's become more of a fan favourite, I think, with time. But that's partly because he's...
Because they keep bringing him back.
That's it, because he keeps coming back in the sequels.
Exactly, it's so weird because I mean he could have been perfectly fine as just he's the villain of the first film.
Yeah,
just leave him there. He's dead, and then I guess maybe he was really popular, and that's why they contrived a reason to bring him back. And now it's him and Jack as sort of
it's weird though.
frenemies.
It's like if Davy Jones joined the crew for the fourth one. It's just a bit weird.
But that could have happened.
I mean, that would have been better.
Yeah, like he's been freed from his prison, and then he's like, I'm not the beast anymore. I can go back to being a prince. Yay! And he's been changed by his experience.
So, sometimes it's fine just to have him be a villain and, a colourful performance in one film. I don't think you necessarily need to bring him back. I mean, this goes back to what Alan said. These films should from the start have probably been Captain Jack and his crew on an adventure, and who were they going to come about this time? What adventure are they going to get themselves embroiled in? Instead of this, they seem to be trying to make it a saga.
Yeah.
The Will, Elizabeth and Jack saga, and it just feels unnatural for it to be that way.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head, really. That's it. It really should just be fun little disposable adventures, but there's this grandiose sense of self-importance. Like you say, it feels like they're really trying to build this large world, but they're just not thinking it through well enough, writing it properly, so it just doesn't quite work. The whole thing just feels a bit bloated as a result.
Well, I mean, before we go off this film, I didn't like anything about the ending. Like, all the sort of plot conclusions, the different ones, none of them worked for me. For a start, those kids getting married in the middle of a sword fight, that annoyed me. Like, that was just... Yeah. It just felt so gimmicky and stupid. Plus, I hadn't realised that they weren't, together. I thought they were in love from the first film. I thought that was the whole point, that they were in love and just kept trying to get to each other.
Classic Jackie Chan movie, that. Getting married in the middle of a fight sequence. It's right up his street.
But I think there's this huge declaration of love. I'm like, oh my god, yes, we'll finally get together. It's like, you've been together for 3 films. What are you talking about? Why is this? You've just been chasing each other around.
Marriage
the world.
Apparently means something to some people. So
but not even that. I mean, but he says, "Oh, will you marry me?" As if it's come out of nowhere. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. And then the bit with Tom Hollander's character, and they're about to all get killed, and he just stops talking for some reason. I don't know what that was about, because that wasn't in his character at all. He suddenly stopped fighting and accepted death.
Are you talking about the bit where he's I love that sequence though, where he's it's like slow motion, he's just walking down the handrail and it's exploding behind him, the whole ship is just falling to pieces and there are bits flying around and he's just gliding through it all. I think it's lovely.
I thought it was ridiculous. But also, it just didn't make any sense with his character. Why did he just suddenly stop? And then,
because it's cool.
And then they destroyed that boat and the rest of the fleet army turned away and ran off. So they defeated everyone with 2 boats. What was it about? What's that about? The other element of the ending, of course, with the Will Turner becomes the death, the ferryman of the dead, which took me a bit by surprise actually, because they just had this big declaration of love thing, and then
that's why they crowbar it in.
You're cursed forever now. But I think
they crowbar the declaration of love in so that he has his finale.
But I think it's supposed to be
his
some
sad ending, and he's got something to cling on to. Like, I'm not defending it because it's not like great writing. I'm just explaining the.
What I was
reasoning behind
expecting was that while they're fighting, what's his name? Stellan Skarsgård would, Will Turner's dad would stab the heart, and he'd become the captain. So like he would have to stay damned, but then he'd lead the ship, and Will would be able to go off with Elizabeth, happy in the knowledge that his dad is still dead, but is now kind of has a purpose and not cursed or whatever.
Well, that's just you wanting a Hollywood happy ending, isn't it?
Well, that's it, but that would seem appropriate for this film. But then the ending we get instead is that they're apart, and I think it's supposed to be some kind of romantic idea that they can only be together once every 10 years. And it's like, no, that's a horrific nightmare, especially for her, because she has to actually go and live her life and then like not get another guy just in case, once every 10 years she's got to go and shag this guy. And then your post-credit sequence
you don't know what she's been up to. Like just because she doesn't bring her new boyfriend to the island to meet her ex.
You don't mention it. You don't mention it. You get like 24 hours of the guy. Just don't mention it. Don't bring it up. Yeah, fair enough. But then like they have one shag, and his like obviously fully fecund sperm is so manly and amazing that he manages to knock her up first time out. And so now
he's probably been like pent up this whole time. Like, he doesn't seem like he seems like quite a repressed guy. He wouldn't be like touching himself or anything. So it's just.
But then now she's saddled with this bloody kid. Poor single mum going on. And she can't go and
live.
Yeah, and
in those days,
she has to give up the life of adventure that she's been enjoying. She has to go and live in some shitty house on her dad's money.
I don't know, but isn't she like fucking loaded? Isn't she from like practically royalty?
No, he's just a governor.
Her dad's a governor.
He's a diplomat. Yeah. And plus he seemed to be, I don't know, he didn't seem to end very well. His
right.
But she's at that point, she is the king of the pirates, am I right? Because that's the whole of the plot.
Well, exactly, but she's obviously not keeping up that life. My point is that in that world, I guess it's not real history, but in that world, she's not from a rich enough family that she can just never marry. She needs to marry someone to keep her in the the life to which she's accustomed. So she can't just live single like a bloody widow. But anyway, then he turns up after 10 years. He's fucking. Talk about pent up, man. He's ready to go. And she's, she brings the bloody kid along. Like, that's, first of all, surprise number one, you've got a kid. Right, deal with that emotionally. Secondly, alright, we'll let him hang around for a couple of hours. I'll give him £5 to go to the cinema and we can have a shag. Well, it's like, it's just not what you need, is it? Like, come on. Just don't tell him.
So,
the fourth one?
Should we move on to the fourth one?
Yeah.
Because there was a. I remember being very excited for it because it was going to do what I thought the series should have done all along.
Well, this was it.
Get rid of everyone else, just Johnny Depp, and bring Jeffrey Rush back. That's fine, but just put him in with a new set of characters, new adventure.
Exactly. Shed Orlando Bloom. Yes. Shed all the dead weight. Shed Keira Knightley. Johnny Depp's the star. Like you say, Jeffrey Rush.
Yeah,
is
you've
there
got his little
sidekick.
What's his name? Shmee or whatever it is. And that guy.
Yeah, Kevin McNally.
But then, but more than that. Like it's Johnny Depp, like it's Jack Sparrow going off to find the Fountain of Youth. That's a great MacGuffin to play with there.
Yeah.
It's got mermaids in it. Mm-hmm. It's got zombies in it. It's based on the classic pirate book on Stranger Tides. The novel that Blackbeard, or is it Bluebeard?
Blackbeard in the film.
Blackbeard, Ian McShane.
Yeah, it's that's the novel Blackbeard is from on Stranger Tides. It's like the classic pirate book. So when I found they were like just adapting a book they'd bought the rights to, I was like, oh, okay, they've probably found this great pirate story and just thought, fuck it, let's just change a few names and make it the sequel. And I thought,
which makes sense.
They've got some, So hopefully the story is going to be good. Was kind of what I was thinking. Jack's going to be in London. I thought, oh, nice change of scenery there. So it's not just more boring tropical islands and stuff, because we've had enough of that surely by now. And the trailer came out and looked great.
Yeah.
It was a really well cut, fun looking film. So then imagine our displeasure when the film came out.
Well, I think the major problem with
2011.
it is weak characters. Weak supporting characters.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Ian McShane as Blackbeard, there's just nothing there, is there? There's no character.
Yeah, and, you know, no disrespect to Ian McShane, like, he does as perfectly fine a job as, for example, Jeffrey Rush does in these films, but it's just another generic.
Well, that is the problem, because that character, it feels just like it's written for Barbossa, but obviously he can't do the pirate thing because it's done, but he doesn't bring anything else either. And whereas, like, say for example, Bill Nye gives this very kind of over the top but appropriate for the character performance with the accent and the way he elongates his words and all that sort of thing, and the way he sort of twitches and floats about and stuff. Just a big character. And that's what you need in this film, a big character. And Ian McShane just does nothing, is just being himself, basically, with a hat on. And then again, like, Penelope Cruz doesn't really do anything either. It's like, you know... And the whole story between Angelica and Jack Sparrow never quite made sense to me. So the relationship between Blackbeard and Angelica it doesn't make sense either. It's because, yeah, he's supposed to be her father, and, like, first you think that might be a con, and then it's, like, real, and she genuinely, like, wants to save him, but she wants to save his soul and redeem him, like, make him change his ways. But then she's just as kind of ruthless and cutthroat as he is. Plus, why does she care about this guy who perhaps, you know, impregnated her mother, but was never a father to her?
There's far too much back and forth with that as well. They sort of they have the, like, twist reveal, oh, he's not your dad, and then they're like, oh, maybe he is, and it's just too much. It's
and then, and then the very ending, he gives up on her, which is in keeping with his character, but then she still wants to help him, or like, it just didn't really work. And then it didn't tie in with her thing with Jack either, because that never came together to anything. It was all just really messy and silly.
But I think we can all agree that was all better than the seriously crowbarred in young people romance between Sam Claflin and a mermaid. Yeah,
I mean, that was enough to make you long for the days of Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom. I mean, it's just so unnecessary. You've shed that dead weight. So then why bring in two, like, poor man's equivalents of those characters? Why just saddle yourself with these two crap? It's like they still didn't have enough faith in Jack Sparrow as a character for the audience. They felt the audience needed a young pretty guy and a young, like, attractive woman, just two bland, boring lovers to project themselves onto, because God forbid people, like, empathize with characters that aren't as immediately, like, everyman as Hollywood always, you know, likes to go with.
The whole thing's just disgustingly shallow. Like, he manages to, you know, perhaps not particularly deliberately, but he manages to trap this ferocious creature that's just, you know, her group has just killed a lot of his, you know, compatriots, but she's very good looking, so maybe I've fallen in love. There you go. And then it's like, there's a few moments of, like, where he's trying to help her and stuff like that, and so you can see how they might create some kind of bond, but it's like, what do you mean you're in love, like, this eternal sense of love? It's like, you don't know what she is, and and nothing else, she's a fucking mermaid. Just because she's got a nice face,
for the bit
it's like,
at the
that's
end
not enough.
Where he, you know, they get married and it's wedding night, and then they go to the bedroom and she, like, tears his face off and eats him, and she's been playing the long game.
That is, I did like that twist that the mermaids are actually ferocious, like, vampire monsters. I did like that.
But that's the idea of mermaids, isn't it? They're like sirens that
not
kind
really
of
a twist,
lure men
that's
to their
just
deaths.
doing them properly, isn't it?
I think that's how they're supposed to be.
Maybe.
That's why they're a kind of a thing. They're feared by pirates, well, by sailors.
Yeah. You know what my biggest complaint with the fourth film is? And it's very similar to one of my biggest complaints with the third one.
Oh?
Is, well, like, the whole thing should have been set in London. Like, they spend 20 minutes in London at the start, and and then they just go off on a pirate ship and they go off to the Caribbean again. And I know it's called Pirates of the Caribbean, but the biggest problem I have with this franchise by like the third film is that I'm just bored of the same old scenery of a pirate ship and tropical islands and stuff. And I need like a fresh like backdrop, and films generally give a fresh backdrop after like or a fresh flavor. And at least the third one, they go off to like, what is it, like Chinatown and some ice mountain and the afterlife. The fourth one spends 20 minutes in London, and then it just goes off and does like really derivative Pirates of the Caribbean stuff that we've seen in the other three films. And I just think it would have been so much better if it had been set in like London, in a kind of more, you know, urban but the old days kind of backdrop, because there's no reason why it had to be, he goes off to sea and everything. I'm sure people would have been happy with Pirates of the Caribbean without it necessarily being set in the Caribbean. You know, you get a couple of snarky bloggers commenting on it, but I'm sure audiences would go along with it. I don't know, do you not think it was a bit of a waste? It just, because as it is, it's just this 20-minute prologue that doesn't really, it's just yet another tangent, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much to...
I could have spent longer there, certainly. I'm fine with them going to the Caribbean. They probably have to, considering it's, like you say, Pirates of the Caribbean. I could have had longer in London, maybe 50-50 sort of thing. But, I mean, I liked the stuff when we were there. Richard Griffiths doing a very camp King George, I thought was funny.
Or maybe not the whole film, but just if it was tied in a bit more, you know, like they go back and forth, or they go there, but there's still a character, like you see some of the fallout of King George, or do you know what I mean? It pays off a bit more down the line. I don't know. It just felt like a tangent, like I say, and just kind of just wasted.
What was with all the religious stuff?
That was odd, wasn't it?
The young man was like, he was this religious character, but that didn't really go anywhere. Salma Hayek, not Salma Hayek, is it? Sorry. A little bit racist.
Close.
Angelica is trying to save the soul of her father, and she's always wearing this big crucifix thing. And then, right at the end, the Spaniards turn up, who have been dropped in throughout, but not properly set up, and we don't know who the fuck they are, what that's about. So that was a weak plot point. But then they turn up and destroy this stuff in the name of God, because this is heathen, like, magic or something. Like, it's not the proper God, so it shouldn't be allowed. Something like that. But then, I don't know if that was saying, like, religion is, they're saying you're replacing your faith with this heathen magic. But are they saying that's because religion isn't strong enough to outdo it, or that Christianity is destroying the old religions? Was it making a point about that, or was it just nonsense?
I mean, obviously we haven't actually talked about. We have a new director this time, Rob Marshall. Is he religious, or is this his influence? I don't know much about him.
This was a big part of why I was so excited for the fourth film. Was a new director. It's a quite outside the box choice for a film like this, and again, it just felt like fresh voice coming to the franchise. It's this guy who's made fairly acclaimed films.
But I didn't think that it was like a pro-religious statement, really. If anything, it was anti-religious, but that wasn't very specific either. It just felt like an idea about spirituality or saving your soul that was intended to be there but never paid off. Or perhaps it was in the original script and then it kind of got chopped up and didn't come back and that sort of thing. It felt like that, where something that it was a loose end.
I don't know, a lot of this film just isn't really very well thought through, I don't think. Like the whole thing with them going to seek the Fountain of Youth, does it... I mean, I don't know, maybe you like it, but I found it really annoying that there was just no real thematic reason for them to go and find the Fountain of Youth. You're sending Jack Sparrow on this mission to find the Fountain of Youth. His dad's in the film at the start. It's so weird that they didn't write some sort of like, my dad's like got a brain tumor or something into the film. I've got to go find this thing so for my own like emotional reasons, and instead he's purely in it for the hell of it. And I mean, maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's good, maybe that's
more in keeping with
with
Jack
his
Sparrow,
character,
but it doesn't explain the other characters. Like, yeah, like Blackbeard is an old guy who wants to go and like have more life, but then Angelica, she's trying to save her dad's soul, but then she's also saying, "I need the years." Like, what are you, about 33 or something? Like, what doesn't? Oh, I've got one more point about the last film. The other thing that, again, it was shallow. There was no depth or anything. Blackbeard has this magic in which he can control his ship just by little flicks of his fingers and things, and it gives him this great power. But then they don't do anything with it. It just means he's in charge, and then there's not really any magic in this film in that sense. It doesn't embrace it in the way that the others do.
Yeah, well, I think these films are very flippant when it comes to the supernatural and the fantasy elements, where, again, to compare this to Indiana Jones, those films do have supernatural fantasy elements, but they are handled with gravitas, because we are still to believe that this is the real world, but there is this supernatural element. Whereas these films feel like pure fantasy after the first film.
It's like comparing the episode of The Simpsons, Bart's elephant. Bart gets an elephant. It's like when you compare that to modern episodes, right? Because the whole thing in Bart Gets an Elephant is I can't believe he's got an elephant. This is crazy. Whereas nowadays, like, Bart get an elephant, and it'd just be like, if I watched one the other day, a newish one, and Lisa had like an elephant and a raccoon and an alligator, and she just put them up in the attic, and it was just like, all right, no one cares. And
that's exactly like that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to move on to the pictures.
All right. Well, do you guys remember? Like, I used to go on about what the fifth Pirates film should be. I think must have been after we saw the fourth film. In fact, you and I, Calvin, went to see the fourth one at the cinema, if I remember.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
I don't think Alan was involved.
Well, I've never seen it until this morning. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's just us then. Yeah, so I remember talking about this with, I think you as well, Alan, years ago, and what they needed to do. And it's kind of what I've been saying this whole episode, is that the film needs a fresh backdrop, a fresh flavour, something to differentiate it from just another load of films on boats and, the Caribbean with pirates. I mean, obviously that's in the name, but there's this whole world of fantasy stuff to explore. It's this huge thing full of great things you could play with. So for the longest time, I kept saying they needed to make it a Western. And what I kept pitching was that they set it in colonial Australia, because that would roughly sync up with the sort of time period. Have Jack Sparrow sent on a convict ship or something to Australia when it was being colonized. And then you delve into some MacGuffin mission with native Australian lore, of which there's plenty of interesting stuff to dig into. But the problem is then the Lone Ranger came out, and I haven't seen it, but that appears to be Gore Verbinski doing Pirates of the Caribbean as a Western. Is that accurate?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either, no.
Yeah, so I thought, sadly, that seems like they kind of tried my idea and it didn't work very well, because they didn't have me there to tell them how to do it properly. So that would have been my pitch, but the Lone Ranger meant I had to just come up with something else. So I basically needed to find a different quote-unquote in space for the franchise. And obviously you can't really do Pirates of the Caribbean in space. Not quite yet, we're not there. But they've kind of touched on everything, like, for 5 minutes. Like, they've just blown through all these things that could have been entire films in just, like, a little tangent. And so what I eventually thought of was, in order to kind of have a new direction, a new flavour, you have them going on a mission to find the lost city of Atlantis.
Yes. That's very in keeping with the franchise, yeah.
Yeah. And the important thing is they find it really early on in the film. So the majority of the film is set in this weird alien place with this new aesthetic. I'd want it to exist under the sea, take inspiration from all that creepy shit you get deep down, like those fish with lights on their face and stuff like that. So that, you know, if you kind of look to those creepy, awful things that live really deep in the bottom of the ocean as your production design, you know, influence, then that's going to give the film a unique flavour right there. If you kind of looked at it a bit like when Jack Sparrow went to the afterlife, but like more tangible, darker, bring in someone like Guillermo del Toro or Tim Burton to direct it, assuming that, you know, I'm not going to be offered the gig. Someone who gets, you know, dark at that kind of commercial level. Get someone like H.R. Giger in to do the art design. Obviously, someone who's still alive, but, you know.
Dead men design no creatures.
And yeah, just make sure there's no Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley shit going on in this one. No young lovers we don't need. You can have Captain Jack. You can have Jeffrey Rush if you want. Maybe some new characters, but only interesting new ones. I was thinking you could get John C. Reilly in as a kind of some sort of scientist, maybe like an old age explorer, eccentric.
No, you want John C. Reilly as Poseidon.
No, you know I've got as the Prime Minister of Atlantis is Helena Bonham Carter.
Actually, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
can totally go with that.
And I've written Steve Buscemi as the Fence because I like casting people as a fence.
A fence.
Yeah.
As in a guy who sells stolen goods or like a wooden prune?
Yeah, they go to him at the start and he's got a map or something and it's a bit on the down low. He's in a pub with Scrum or something. So, I mean, that's it, really.
That'd really work.
It's a pretty straight, down the line
the Atlantis thing is great. Yeah, it's completely in keeping with what they do, isn't it? That kind of...
Yeah, but I think it's I think it's basic because I do think as a franchise there's a lot to work with, and they've made kind of baffling decisions in a lot of ways. They've made a lot of missteps, but I do think there's a lot there to play with. Like I say, it's this whole fantasy world built around this kind of old mythology. And
shall I do mine next because it kind of ties in a certain way? Yeah. Because my pitch is, well, to put it in a logline would be Jack Sparrow in the Wild West.
Oh wow!
Because when you were saying that, I thought the exact same thing. It just needs something refreshing, a new setting. I don't recall ever having a conversation with you about it. Maybe I've subliminally stolen your
Maybe
idea.
It wasn't you. Maybe it was. I definitely had a lot of conversations about it, like circa 2011. I definitely spoke about it with Calvin, I think, but.
I mean, like I say, I don't directly remember it, but it makes perfect sense because it's the same kind of pirate outlaw kind of mentality where you can just be drifting alone and getting up to trouble. But yeah, my idea was you give Jack Sparrow some sense of immortality or something that means he's in a different time period because the Wild West was much later. But then you could easily use that as a setup to put him in other time periods as well, in other sequels, and just sort of play with that idea as much as you want. So yeah, I've got him.
Well, I think that was like why I said colonial Australia. That was me kind of bending over backwards to get him to
but
desert.
It's a nice idea though. Yeah, like that would make sense. So I think I'm doing a similar kind of thing, but I kind of had him in Mexico, or maybe the southern states, that sort of idea, and put some backstory in that, he's cursed on the sea or the Kraken's trying to get whatever that he's decided he needs to get away from the sea.
Do you think they go there in the new one with Javier Bardem?
It's pretty close to the Caribbean. So some reason he's cursed on the sea. So he goes to the desert. He goes to get as far away as possible. And so he's just drifting around Mexico and just, doing what he does and getting into adventures and scrapes and things. So then somewhere along the lines, he gets his hands on a treasure map for some Aztec gold or, something like that. Something that he's chasing. But he gets to this place where he's supposed to be. This is like he gets embroiled in this thing. And I'm basically, all I was doing was like those classic, like Clint Eastwood westerns, like Fistful of Dollars and all that, where it's just like this one man turns up to a town and the bad guys are like trying to take over the town or whatever, and he fights them.
I thought you were going to say there's a sheriff position going, and they're like, "Oh, you be the new sheriff," and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is a."
I did definitely think of that, where like they go, "Oh, this
all the
this
food's
Jack's...
given for free and blah blah blah. This is easy. Why is no one else doing this job?" And then and then the big, like, beefy Bluto walks in behind him, and then he's like, "You the new sheriff?" And then he like pulls at his collar and gulps.
But that would totally work within the story I'm creating. Yes, that would work. And then they can say to him like, "Oh, this is Jack Sparrow, the Sheriff Jack Sparrow." Actually,
yeah, we're not gonna we're not gonna put up with your stuff anymore, Bluto. We've got a sheriff who's big and tough, and
then they turn around and he's running away into the distance. But yeah, basically something like that. But he has to stick around because the treasure, whatever he's searching, is here somewhere, and then. I thought the sort of main bad guy who can be like leading a gang of Mexicans to kind of whatever they're doing, that could be Antonio Banderas.
Can he be doing it as a Mexican wrestler with a mask?
No,
that's Jack Black.
Can he just be like normal, but his henchmen are all like Mexican wrestlers?
Well, I've got an idea for the henchman actually to make it kind of gimmicky. So at first it seems like Antonio Banderas is just a general bad guy who's terrorizing the locals, but then later on it sort of turns out he's after the treasure too. Like he knows something as well, and he's got these kind of special powers. Because the previous films, they do like to play with the mythology, like the Davy Jones idea and then the Calypso, god of the seas, and all this sort of stuff. So we can use that idea, but because we're in Mexico, we have to use their kind of mythology, which is Catholicism. So, what I'm gonna have is
Mexico's got some, like Mexican Catholicism is fascinating as well. It's like really, it's really like one thing that's gone through a filter and been lost in translation, and then it's put through about 5 other translations, and the end result is you can go down to Tijuana and see like Virgin Mary statues kept in cages to prevent the locals from stealing them, and just things like that. It's just very odd stuff. And all the hundreds of saints that you pray to. If you're a drug dealer, you've got a specific saint for...
That's exactly what I'm using. Yeah. There's just this saints for everything. So what I want Antonio Banderas' kind of mystical power to be is that he can kind of harness the power of saints. So what he'll have, I haven't really worked out the details, but what he'll have is that like he'll have this whole like army of priests, and each one of them is kind of mystically bound to a saint. And so, for example, you have a scene where like Jack's trying to escape through like a cactus patch, right? A field of cactuses, and so then he calls on the guy who's the patron saint of cactuses, and he goes to him, right? You go going now, and that particular guy like does some sort of incantation or whatever, gets possessed by the saint, and then he can control the cactus, and they kind of move and grab Jack and stuff like that.
Oh, so, that'd work really well.
But then you
really
can just
in
use
keeping with
But
Pirates
anything he
of the
needs, he
Caribbean.
goes, oh yeah, this guy's the patron saint of, dogs.
Yeah.
So the dogs attack him. Or like, whatever it is, right? You can just, because there's a saint for everything.
You got to have a saint of sand who like
Yeah.
makes all the sand come to life and engulf him at the end or something. You've got to have.
The other thing is that Johnny Depp has like a special horse. Like it's his horse, and he like really makes sure it's always looked after. All that. And then later on, near the end, the horse turns into Gibbs, like his sidekick guy, and it like turns out he just had some sort of horse curse on him. But then
Kevin
like so
McNally
Johnny
character,
Depp.
brilliant.
Yeah, and then Johnny Depp's just kind of pissed off because now he hasn't got a horse. Gibbs is back, and it's like, so yeah, that's just a sort of side thing. And then now, what I want as well, your little subplot that you need to have. You could have that there's some young señorita in the village who her brother is one of these priests that Antonio Banderas is one of his hoods. And she's saying, look, he's a good guy. He would never do bad, so he must be being controlled somehow. And so that's kind of gives you a bit of an emotional story to tie it in that they're trying to save him. Like Jack's not. He's just going along with it, whatever, to say, get the treasure, whatever. But she, just to give it that kind of, and instead of just doing a love story, I thought I'll make them brother, sister, be a bit more different. But then you could have that as well, like, at some crucial point, the brother, he's called upon to do something, but because it's his sister, like it's his love for her is like strong enough to break the spell or something like that, just play it out like that. And then basically the big climax is that Jack has to harness some kind of spiritual thing as well in order to beat Antonio Banderas. Which I thought he could summon the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Wow!
Because he's
and they could
annoyed that he hasn't got a horse.
Rendered in whatever way. And then, yeah.
Was that not what you
however
were
he does it.
thinking of? I thought you were doing that on purpose.
No.
That is exactly
No,
like the sort of thing his character would do. He'd be like moping around because he's not got a horse anymore, and then he finds this like thing that says he can
to summon a horse.
Yeah, bring a horse about, and it. I think that worked well.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so that's kind of the conclusion of it, and then that's the big action thing at the end, and then all the priests are freed from their kind of demonic possession or whatever he was, power he had over them. The brother and sister are reunited. Jack gets some treasure, blah blah blah, and then the very sort of final shot is like he's going off into the sunset, but he's on Gibbs's back because he hasn't got a horse, so it's just rather than him on the horseback riding off, it's him on the guy, and they could have a little bit of banter. And that's it.
Yeah, we good. That.
Very good. Yeah, you two have both come up with sort of very solid, like, could actually be done ideas.
Right. Calvin, what have you got for us?
Right. I took my inspiration from a very different place. So, Pirates of the Caribbean is obviously based on the Disneyland ride.
Uh-huh.
So this got me thinking about theme parks, and apparently
Pepsi
in my
Max,
Wikipedia research,
the ride, the movie.
In my online research, I came across what is supposed to be the first like true theme park. Like obviously there have been like fairgrounds and areas where there were rides and amusement zones and that sort of thing. But apparently the first ever theme park was a place called Santa Claus Land.
I guess that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because theme park used to mean there was like a theme to it, didn't it? Like originally, and it doesn't
exactly.
Like nowadays, that's not really the thing. But it used to be like, ooh, it's Spooky World. It's Alice in Wonderland land. It's
exactly. So this place was built, and I love the backstory behind it because there was a man. And he was called Louis J. Koch, I think is how you pronounce it, Koch. And
isn't
that Coke?
Coke.
I think that's Coke.
Koch.
If you pronounce it as cock, we'll probably be able to make more jokes out of it. So
Anyway, Mr. Cock visited the town of. There's a town in Indiana called Santa Claus, and he had 9 children, and it really bothered him that they travelled to the town and that Santa Claus wasn't there.
Was his theme park like he just dressed all his kids up as elves and like forced them to build toys?
Until the last, bearing in mind, this theme park opened in 1946. It was run by members of that family until, the last 5 years. Wow. So it was really a family-run business. Anyway, so yeah, this guy, thought it was really sad that there was no Santa Claus in Santa Claus. And after construction was delayed by World War II for a few years, it eventually opened in August 1946, and it was just a themed Santa Claus area. So it was always Christmas. It was always Christmas in Santa Claus Land. Fast forward to the 80s, so 40 years later, the family realized that maybe they're limiting their intake for the summer months by only having it be Christmas themed. So they decided to open other themed areas based on other holidays. So there's a Halloween bit, there is a 4th of July bit, and there is a...
Is your pitch going to be about an employee who works in the Halloween area who one day stumbles upon the Christmas area? And he can't believe all the magic and wonder that he sees, so he tries to take a bit of it back to Halloween area.
You know, that is probably where it would naturally go. The other two areas, the other area, by the way, is like a water park thing. So now the
I thought you were going to say Valentine's Day Land or something.
Nah, they got sick of this holiday themed thing. Anyway, it is called Holiday World and Splash and Safari. That is the name of the title. The slogan is number 1 for family fun.
Is there a safari area with animals? Or
no, that's the water park area bit.
It's just called Splash and Safari.
Yeah. So the park has these several worlds based on these holidays, and each one has a mascot. So we obviously have Santa Claus for the Christmas part. We have Safari Sam, who is a green crocodile and mascot of the water park.
Wait, is this
George
Is this real? Still?
Yeah, this is real.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all real. And we have George the Eagle, who's the mascot for...
It's got to be the 4th of July. He's a huge American eagle who comes down and picks off Mexicans.
And we have Kitty Claus, who's a black cat, and she's Kitty Claus, and she is the mascot for the Halloween section. And the overall park seems to have a mascot of a dog who's called Holler Dog. Now, so my pitch is to do a film based on those characters from that theme park. We're going to go back to the original theme park and do a film based on that. So because the park started with Santa Claus, he's going to be our main character. And in a casting and performance direction inspired by Johnny Depp, I want Santa Claus to be played by Kevin Bacon, channeling a David Bowie persona. So we'd have...
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
That's I haven't thought of. Well, I've got casting ideas for Kitty Claus, who is the Halloween cat. I want her to be played by Lady Gaga.
Yeah, that's good.
And I want George
Hollywood whitewashing again. The black cat played by a white woman.
So is she?
Oh,
is she like motion capturing as a realistic looking cat, or is it kind of like Catwoman and it's just a?
I was going to go down the Catwoman route for this. Similarly, George the Eagle, I would quite like Kelsey Grammer to play him. And
who was the other one?
For
Mr. Armadillo.
There's Holly Dog. No, there's Holly Dog and Safari Sam.
Doesn't Safari Sam sound
who's the
like
crocodile, right?
Like what? You know, in the 90s when like every company was coming up with shit video game mascots because they wanted to come up with the next Mario or Sonic. and they were all these like
Yes.
all these characters with attitude and sunglasses. Safari Sam sounds like one of those that just got left on the roadside, like with Alex Kidd.
He does, doesn't he?
And Gex and all super Bubsy.
Anyway, I don't have casting ideas for Holodog and Safari Sam, but I want to change Safari Sam to Safari Samantha, and we can
that's
cast
ruined
young
my
upcoming
casting suggestion.
actors, and
They
can
Melissa
have a romance.
McCarthy is Safari Samantha.
I had a good idea for Safari Sam though.
Oh,
Paul Hogan.
Can I ask, what is Safari Sam? Is he like a...
He's a crocodile.
Oh, he's a crocodile.
He's a green crocodile.
Okay, cool.
That's why you have Paul Hogan.
I forgot if he was
Twist,
an animal
ironic.
or if he was like a prospector or what. Like,
no, he's a green crocodile with a sort of like a Crocodile Dundee hat and sort of a very colourful top.
A crocodile has to be like an old guy. Like it's got an old feel to it.
No, I want to cast young people, young woman. I'm gonna. Yeah.
so wait,
What about
who are you
this
casting
dog?
as a
What
crocodile?
about the hollow dog?
No, I'm not. Holodog and Safari Sam, we're going to cast young, upcoming actors and change the gender of one of them so that they can have a young romance subplot like they do in all these Pirates films.
Can we get Jack Nicholson out of retirement to be the crocodile? I think he.
It's not really going with my plan of changing it to Safari Samantha and casting a young lady in it. But
I'm
okay.
trying to think of who looks like a crocodile. All right, what woman looks like a crocodile?
I mean, if we could get Jack Nicholson, I'd happily rewrite the film around that. And maybe Holodog can be a woman instead, and we can like get Meryl Streep or something. I don't know.
Who are you thinking is Safari Samantha?
I'm not. I'm just going to cast young, upcoming actors that aren't big names because we've got Lady Gaga, Kevin Bacon, and Kelsey Grammer. So that's our
so the
star
acting
power
quality
sorted.
is ticked off.
I don't think
you just
Kelsey
need-
Grammer should be in this.
Oh no!
I think
He'd be great as a patriotic eagle.
No,
4th
but
of July.
I think you should get. Is he called Sam Elliott?
Oh yes, yes, he'd be better.
And then
It's not often you can
Kelsey
say that
Grammer
about
can be
Kelsey Grammer.
Crocodile Sam or whatever he's called instead.
Safari Sam.
Safari Sam.
Okay. Anyway, those are our characters. That's our casting. So, for the plot, we're going to set the film in the 1950s, and because the Russians won the Cold War, everywhere is communist now.
Wait a minute. Did you just drop that in out of nowhere? That wasn't. What was that?
Has he ever played a Russian, Kelsey Grammer? It seems like it must have happened.
He played King Herod, but he wasn't Russian, I suppose.
Well, Calvin, did you just drop that communist thing in from nowhere? Did I miss something earlier where you set that up?
No, we've only been talking about the characters so far, so this is the plot. I want to set it in the 50s because that's when the park will have been big and, you know... Well, I was thinking, like, who's the enemy of...
Is the park established and then communists take over, or is...
No, I mean, I'm sort of thinking that the park doesn't really exist. It's just we're taking inspiration from the mascots and, you know, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean isn't actually set at the park. It's just taking inspiration
I assume the
from
characters
that.
all lived and, like, worked at the park. So what, these characters are just knocking around in...
They're in some kind of flat share.
Do they know each other, or does Safari Sam...
Do they work
like...
as mascots for, like, maybe football teams? That's something.
If you let me get on with my pitch,
Okay.
it all will become clear.
Okay.
So...
Is there going to be a romance
the
between Holodog and Kitty Claus?
No, Safari Sam. And
We're
Hollow
changing
Dog.
it to Safari Samantha. And there's going to be a romance between those two, for God's sake.
is
Right.
is the dog actually hollow, though, or is it just a name?
Or is it like a hologram, like holographic dog?
Yeah, that'd be quite a cool idea. A hologrammatic dog.
Yeah.
So, everywhere is communist now. And Santa's at his workshop. And he's like...
Santa Claus was in it.
Santa Claus is played by Kevin Bacon channeling David Bowie. So he's in his workshop and he's like, "Oh, we've only got 100 days to go."
Is he in the?
And he's looking at his naughty.
Is he in the North Pole?
Yes.
Okay.
He's at his workshop and he's looking at his naughty and nice list, and there's only one name on it, and it's in the nice part, and it's Joseph Stalin. And
It's
Santa Claus, Joseph Stalin.
All right. Okay.
Wait, is he?
And
Is he on the nice list?
Yes, he's the only name on the nice
Okay.
list.
And in this story world, is he like just a young boy from Arkansas, or is he, Joseph Stalin?
No, he's overlord of the world.
Oh, okay, good.
Has he actually been nice, or has he pulled some strings to get his name on there?
Well, it's so Santa goes to his elves and asks them what's going on, and they inform him that because of the new communist world order, no one celebrates themed holidays anymore, apart from Joseph Stalin, because we're going to take inspiration from Animal Farm here, and we're all equal, but some are more equal than others. So it's up to Santa. Alan, you'll love this. Santa has to form a team of holiday mascots. So the first third of the film is going to be him recruiting the other characters.
So he goes, we've got to go get those well-known holiday mascots, and then he knocks on the door of Kitty Claus.
Yeah, can we see him like trying to recruit the top tier mascots, and they just tell him to piss off, like the Easter Bunny?
Yeah.
They're just like, "Mate, I'm busy, mate. Come on, like I'm the Easter Bunny."
Yeah, like he tries to recruit the Cupid, but Cupid's like hardcore like communist, and he's gonna like sell him out, so he has to move on to the next one, and yeah,
Which is Safari Sam.
Keeps going about how love is the great equalizer. It brings people together, no matter who you are.
So he assembles his team, and the second third of the film is the group traveling across Russia to find Joseph Stalin and take him out. And we'll have some conflict along the way, and romance between Safari Samantha and Holodog. And then in the final third, I think we'll have a big battle, and the good guys triumph, and holidays are restored to the world because the communists have lost.
The thing is, Calvin, right, I think with a little tweak, this could be better because, Joseph Stalin, he's great, but who's a more colourful character? Fidel
Trotsky.
Castro.
Oh, yes.
Plus, the Americans really hated Fidel Castro because he was right on their doorstep and they couldn't do anything about it. It really pissed them off.
Yeah, plus that would take Santa out of his usual environment, wouldn't it? Because he's going from North Pole cold, Russia's cold. Get him to Cuba.
Oh yeah, he gets to Cuba and he has to take his jacket off. And
Yeah,
he's like,
no. We're gonna have fish out of
Beard's
water
not
comedy
helping.
there.
Can we bring the Kim Jong family into this? It's always good to drum up a bit of publicity when you start prodding them.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, like Father Christmas has got frozen ice powers.
Oh, I thought you meant. Well, I tried to stay away.
yeah, in your imagination, Calvin.
I tried to stay away from that, really. I didn't want it to be too much like Rise of the Guardians, which was a film where Santa Claus teamed up with the Easter Bunny and...
So what do they do then? They just go and kick Stalin's face in?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Yarg, we hope you enjoyed this voyage with Diminishing Returns. Be sure to sail with us again next week and head over to our Facebook and Twitter pages and subscribe on iTunes for more podcasting gold. Yarg!